Welcome back to Cocktails and Classics. I'm Dylan. Joining me is Ben, and we're still going through Band of Brothers. We're on episode 4 now, Replacements. With the addition of many new men, Easy Company heads to Holland to participate in Operation Market Garden and prepare an Allied route into Germany, but they meet stiff German resistance. I think it was episode 2, where I had seen the episode descriptions. And this was the one that I was kind of curious if it was going to be like a lull or like kind of like a filler type episode. I wouldn't say necessarily that it is. It's a tough watch, I will say. This is the first like loss that Easy Company faces. The first time that they have to retreat. And so we see a lot of loss, a lot of like it said, tough German resistance, and your boy that you've been waiting to see, Bull Randleman. We see him kind of behind enemy lines, fighting for his life for a little bit. And so, Ben, what were your kind of like initial thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I know there were parts of it that were definitely. I think it was tough to see, as much as I think this episode to me felt, I don't want to say formulaic, but after you're introduced in episode 2 to Hall, and then at the end he dies, when you're immediately introduced to like the 3 new recruits at the beginning of this episode, it was just one of those things where you're like, oh, at least one of these guys isn't going to make it. So I felt like up front, I kind of had a feeling that one of them wasn't going to make it. I didn't realize it was going to be James McAvoy that wasn't. I didn't know which one. But this episode for me solidified that Randleman is the OG of the unit.
Well, I mean, everyone was literally like about to go back there to get him.
I also just loved in the beginning where they're like, you listen to him, he's the smartest man in the unit.
Yeah.
And the fact that, so like he has the respect of everyone, and then after, I can't remember who it was bullying Miller about like, you have this medal but you weren't there, yada yada yada, and Randleman just looks at him and he's like, you didn't fight in Normandy either. And the dude's just like, no, I hold on, wait, no, I was injured before I could get out of the plane, and I was injured before the jump. It was just like, yeah, but same thing, like you don't shit on anyone else because you weren't there. It's like, damn, way to be like the leader in the room. Good on you. But also, yeah, when he is kind of sitting there in the drain pipe with the fire behind him, sweating as the sun starts to fade and the Germans are moving in. Oh, man, for him to survive that, like basically on his own, that was intense. And I think might be the most tense by far part of this series in the barn when they're watching as the Nazis come in. They're inspecting everything. They find the bloody rag, and then they're about to leave. And then, is it explained? I was seeing it, but it was honestly kind of dark on my screen. What was the noise was it just a random noise, or did
the girl made it?
The girl made the noise? Okay. I thought so, that's what it was, but I couldn't tell if it was like her trying to look out.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he just stops and turns around, ooh, and then it almost looks like he's about to leave, or no, it's because he finds the rag and then he's about to leave. And yeah, that whole time when you're just watching and thinking like he's just yelling out, hello, who's there? And like no one makes any noise, so you're like, oh, maybe he's gonna leave. It's like, and then the whole time you're like, well, what's Randall gonna do? Because if he comes at this guy, all he's gonna do is yell and alert everyone that they're in there. And then the vehicles going by, making the tanks and that rolling through, making the noise was. Perfect. Yeah, that whole scene was just. It was just so, like, it was tense, because this show has, almost a pre-Game of Thrones type thing of, like, don't get attached to anyone, because anyone could die at any point, and it was just like, are they seriously going to go through all of this, and then we somehow have this account of what happened to this guy, or we're just making it up for the purpose of story, and then this guy's going to be killed. I don't know. That was worrisome to me, but yeah, seeing him meet up with everyone. Speaking of, sorry to just keep bouncing here. Speaking of tension, ho, Captain Sobel, baby.
Oh my
He's
god,
back.
yes.
Oh,
I mean, it was very kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But the way he kind of is like his old self to Malarkey, kind of, where he's like, "Where'd you find this government property, this motorcycle?" You know, like fuck off, Sobel. Hope you're enjoying teaching the chaplains how to jump out of airplanes.
and now you're the supply sergeant. So basically, you're in charge of, yeah. You're shocker. You're now the tattletale guy who has to make sure everything's back where it was supposed to be.
In my notes, I wrote, I was like, oh damn, a young James McAvoy, and then like typed a bunch more lines, and then I had to come back and be like, damn, rip. Who was the guy? I'm confused. At one part, they're like, "Oh, this guy survived because he turned his head when somebody yelled at him."
It was Brewer when he's walking out in front of he's walking
Oh,
out in front
the
of the
guy
tank,
who was walking all the
and
way out in front.
and yeah, and
Okay.
Randleman yells out and is like, "Hey, get back here, get back here." Then he
Yeah,
says
they're
it
making
like
fun
one
of
more
him.
time. Yeah, and as he goes to as he turns around is when he got shot. So like literally that's how they made it. But the other thing that just was shocking with that was just like that happens, then the medic goes up, gets shot. Then the next guy who goes up to check, you would have thought like after the medic went down, like just keep moving. Like I know no man left behind, but you can't keep sending people up there just to get picked off one by one repeatedly.
I don't know. This was another interesting episode to me where we see a lot of the story I feel like you don't usually get in war shows and movies. The they have to go to Holland or like the Netherlands to do this Operation Market Garden, and they sneak up onto this town where they see people, and they start like the people see the American troops and they start like celebrating, and they throw this like big parade basically. And so like I feel like you necessarily don't really see that part of like, oh, the Americans are here, yay, like throw this big party. And then while they're doing this, the thing you really don't ever see, I feel like, is the fact that they're taking all these people, the women who slept with German soldiers, and like undressing them, cutting their hair, branding them with like a swastika on their forehead, and then like the resistance leaders talking to Winters and Nixon, and he says something like, "Oh, well, they're lucky because they're taking the men out and shooting them," and so like I feel like you don't ever really see like a lot of the stuff that happened behind the scenes. I feel like we know the story of like, Americans doing this. We know big battles. We know this sort of thing, but we don't really know like, oh, this particular country, this is how they did. At least from an American's viewpoint, like we don't really know how the Dutch reacted to, the actions of others, or we don't know, some of the other places. But we get that scene. We get the like I said, poor Dutch kid that his first time trying chocolate was American chocolate, especially like
You're in like the best place to get chocolate.
he's like, oh, he's never tried chocolate. Here you go. Here's some army ration chocolate. Probably the lowest form of, or maybe it's amazing because they were, rationing it back home and sending it out to the troops. I don't know. Don't have high
Yeah, I
hopes.
don't know.
But
I feel like, let's be honest, if it were like Hershey, they would have product placement the shit out of that.
probably.
Like, there's no way that if it was like a brand name that brand wasn't pushing for. Oh, look, it's the chocolate we give the troops. If it's good enough for the troops, it's good enough for It's good enough for moms and kids and s'mores and whatever else.
So in this episode, the big plot point is the Operation Market Garden, where they go into this town. I don't know the specific name, but it's the town where Vincent Van Gogh was born. They're trying to take this point because I'm sure it was all of the Allies, but the plan was that we would be able to be into Germany and end the war by Christmas. We entered in through the Netherlands. That did not happen, but in this town, there is huge German resistance. There is tanks hunkered down and like decoyed, which was the probably one of the biggest turning points in the episode because can't think of his name. It's not Toy. Who's the? There it is. Martin. Martin
Okay.
sees the tank and then
Yeah.
he like goes back to the tank driver or the spotter, I guess, and he's like, around this corner through this building there is a tank, and the guy's like, well, I can't destroy property, so
Yeah,
he's
you
like,
can't
if you just
destroy the
fire
tank
through
if
it.
I can't see it. Then we're screwed. Like we're screwed then.
Yeah,
We'll figure it out. Yeah. Then they just immediately start getting destroyed. Great,
yeah,
thanks.
round the corner and just get blasted. Yeah, that whole scene was just like, oh my god. I mean, I understand it, like don't destroy property if you can. It's kind of like it's probably not a war crime, but like,
Emphasis on if you can though. I feel like that's like a thing of like though like hey, we know there's a German tank there. We're telling you it's there. You should
yeah,
you should blow this thing up before it can shoot you. I feel like that's justification enough for someone if to come back and be like, "Oh, hey, you blew this thing up." I feel like you could come back and be like, "Yeah, no, the Americans told us that there was a tank there, so we shot it." I don't know. I feel like that was just the dumbest thing of not putting the reason of like, "Oh, no, we can't do it." Why? Oh, well, we don't technically see it. Yeah, it's camouflaged.
and like we said, there was a lot of loss, first defeat, a lot of casualties, and even not just like casualties, but like, so Bull goes missing partway through the episode when the that tank explodes and is like crawling. He's crawling in the ditch and it's like rolling slowly next to him, which actually ends up like saving his life because he gets into that like pipe. Because I feel like if he would have just stopped, he would have been out in the middle of the ditch and not have been near any sort of cover. Buck takes a shot in the ass, which it sounds like it went like cheek to cheek. Like it was. Is
That's
that is
how
that
they
how
made
it
it.
matters?
That's how it seemed to me.
Like it just
I know
went
I saw the
clean.
the hole in one when they're loading him into the truck.
Yeah. And then Nixon is a lucky son of a bitch. He almost got domed. Besides him, we Miller passes. You said Brewer survives. Other than that, that's pretty much everybody who was like kind of an important character, right?
Yeah, I looked at the so again, just because trying to keep everything in track. And again, most of the more main characters I've got figured out. Gordon, Lipton, Lewis, or Nixon, Winters, Wynn, Malarkey, Randleman. Martin still confuses me with his helmet on. A couple of them still can confuse me when their helmets are on. But yeah, I go back through just to follow up and make sure I'm understanding who was who. And in this episode, in terms of the casualties and deaths that they list, you have Brewer was wounded in action, Van Klinken was killed in action, and Miller was killed in action.
So, I mean, as far as like our characters are concerned, there's not too many casualties, but the end credits reveal that there was a ton of losses at this battle. I like, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily like gallows humor or just kind of like trying to alleviate a little bit of the like tension sometimes, but I do like Winters and Nixon sometimes being smartasses towards each other. Because like when they're doing this operation initially, somebody says, "Oh, like it'll be easy. It's gonna be all the old people and kids on this side of like the German forces." And then like at the end of the episode, after everything happens, and and Winters is like, "I hate retreating." They're like, "Oh, well, we'll just have to find another way around." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be all old people and kids." Like they go back to that line being like jokingly saying it, and it is like makes you chuckle sometimes because it's kind of like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah, again, I don't know what Nixon's role is. It seems like he's more like on the intelligence side. It just seems like that's the case because every time something comes up, he seems to know more about what's going on than anyone else.
yeah, wow. Looking at his little thing on here, he went to Yale and MIT, the real life Nixon,
Yeah, I see that too.
before enlisting in the army.
Oh, interesting that Nixon was moved to battalions. I forgot. Yeah, he gets out from under Sobel's command before he goes to a different I think location to finish his training, right?
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. Here you go. So this throws back to episode 2 when we were talking about that map. On June 6, 1944, Nixon dropped into Normandy on D-Day as part of the Operation Overlord and managed to link up with battalion headquarters. Here he was given a map by Winters detailing all the German artillery positions in Normandy, and realizing its importance, ran 3 miles to Utah Beach to pass it up the chain of command. Command was so thrilled with the map that they sent the first 2 tanks that landed at Utah Beach to aid the 101st, providing Nixon a ride back to battalion headquarters. So that's why he was on the tank at that one
That's why
point?
he shows up at the end of episode. Yeah, he shows up at like the end of episode 2, riding in with all the tank guys. Okay, that makes it seem so much. We should have explored that more in the show because that makes him seem so much more badass than the guy who just shows up when all the fighting's done every time.
And then, so here, during Operation Market Garden, part of the Allied plan to recapture Holland, Nixon was nearly killed when a stray shot glanced off of his helmet, lightly burning the side of his head. I feel like, also, if anyone was gonna kind of, frat bro, what is the word I'm looking for? Not like orientation. Haze.
Haze?
Yeah, like frat bro haze the new recruits. It would definitely be Garnier.
Oh, that
Garnier.
dude seems like he definitely founded a fraternity when he got back home.
I feel like so. Like him messing with was it Miller that he got to do the darts and gamble, and then goes back over to the table to like. Oh no, it was
No, I don't think
is
he
that
was
guy's
there
name?
gambling with the cigarettes. Buck Compton and the other guy were. I can't remember who was it. Gordon, maybe. I can't. Again, there's so many guys with dark hair that have similar facial structures throughout the unit that it's hard to tell everyone apart.
Oh no, what is that guy's name? It's the guy he calls Babe. Heffron. Heffron is the guy that he like gets to gamble with is it Buck? That's
he gets
doing the darts and he
Buck.
does the
He's doing the darts and then finally he's like, "Wait, aren't you right-handed?" Oh my god, you're right. Just bullseye right away. That'll be 2 packs.
well, yeah, so he does that and then he goes to the table and he's like, "Oh, what do you say? What do you hear?" or whatever, and tells them the story of like Heffron and the plane or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone's gonna haze, it definitely felt like it was gonna be him.
Oh, 100%. I mean, just like the guy who's the most likely to sit there and shit on the guys for getting medals for something they weren't there would also be the guy who wasn't there.
Yeah,
Like, that's such a thing for that type of person to do. To be like, oh, it was a unit medal. I'm in the unit. You weren't even there. It's like, yeah, neither were you, dude. What's different? My situation's different. It makes it okay.
it doesn't. It doesn't make it different.
I also feel so bad for Lipton. Dude keeps getting promoted. Like, he gets promoted and then is just like, oh, hey, you've been promoted. You now get to tell everyone bad news every time there's bad news. Congrats, thanks, bye. Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, that was. It was kind of funny in this one where it's like, they're all like, yeah, yeah, he's got some news to tell us, and then it's like, yeah, sorry, we're loading out. No, like,
Yep. We're heading out. I know you guys enjoyed France, but I don't think we'll be back. Ah. Also, when did Malarkey and when did they steal that motorcycle? Did they ever show it, or did they just show him driving it around and parking it?
they just show him driving and parking it, almost like that when they almost
I
get
never
hit.
realized it was stolen.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never realized it was stolen.
me neither.
I knew they were joyriding, but I didn't. I mean, that they made it seem like they'd stolen it from somewhere else, brought it back to the unit, and then took it out and around all the time. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe them just joyriding was Sobel being like, you stole army property. I was shocked, though. When he first rolled up, I was thinking like he was, because they lost their CO during the jump, and then Winters was like acting commanding officer. I was like, are you fucking kidding? They're going to bring this guy back. He's going to be the new commanding officer after they've gone through all of this shit and done all this work. This dude's going to roll in and be the fucking CO. This is the worst.
No, that would be awful in real life, and I feel like in and as a piece of like dramatic fiction, I feel like that would suck. Like we already kind of defeated this piece of shit. Please don't bring it back. There is the piece. So when they're doing, there's the liberation of Eindhoven, and they're like having the little celebration and stuff like that. The interesting piece when they're walking and they say like, "What's up?" Somebody says snipers, and then they roll their collars to like hide their ranks.
Yeah, they don't want to show that they're, yeah. They don't want to make themselves a target for being a higher rank.
Yeah, on IMDb it says like, this is why in contemporary war zones and in forward operating bases, soldiers wear either subdued or no rank insignia, and it's mainly no salute zones, which is a pretty interesting thing that I never really thought about.
Yeah, I remember that being a thing. Again, weirdly enough, I feel like that I knew about that thanks to watching MASH.
All these years, you've been waiting to use your MASH
I
knowledge.
think that's definitely a thing where like, oh my god, it's coming handy. I just finished a rewatch not long ago, so it makes sense. Yeah, I know they've talked about it like when they were out, like in the fields or something, like driving along, and someone went to salute, and they're like, "What are you doing? There could be snipers." Yeah, so well, you don't salute don't salute commanding officers because that's who the snipers are going to shoot. And that's just how I knew. Typically in those situations, that they'll tend to cover their rank so that they're not made the first target.
Which is interesting later on when Bull comes back on the Jeep or whatever, and Garnier sees him. He's like, I don't know whether to salute you or kiss you or something like that. I forget what he says exactly, but like, I'm like, well, then you wouldn't salute him though, would you? If you were in like a forward operating.
I wonder if at that point it's different just because of the fact that they were kind of pulled out from the battle. I don't know.
Did we catch their goof? No, I'm just kidding. Is that on the IMDb goof page?
Oh shit! Shit, we got him. All right, so I'm reading about Sobel because we launched into this. Oh, okay. I think I just read a slight spoiler.
Uh-oh.
Just the fact that I think he will be back again, which is the same as looking at IMDb, and if you see more than one or two episodes listed next to Schwimmer's name. So after the war, Sobel went into the Army National Guard. He was called in for active duty in Korea. Basically, this says sometime around the 1960s, he met Major Hester, who was his first company executive officer, and later his operations officer. They said Sobel had mental problems from his war experience, and he was found bitter at life and at Easy Company. In 1970, Sobel attempted suicide by shooting himself through his temple, but he only severed his optic nerves and basically blinded himself. He was moved to an assisted living home and lived there for 17 years before dying of malnutrition and neglect in 1987. Like, this man's end of life is... Man, it makes you almost feel bad. Oh, God, it's even worse. Oh, it gets worse. No funeral was held. They didn't even hold a funeral. Oh, God.
Wow.
Oh, this makes me feel worse. Like, look, I know I don't like the character.
Jesus.
And if it's based on a real guy, he seems like he was kind of an asshole, but...
Now you're making me feel bad. I called him a piece of shit earlier in this episode.
I mean, to be fair, in this, he's portrayed as a piece of shit. And to be fair, the way it sounds like IRL, he kind of was a piece of shit. But that doesn't mean he deserves what his end of life was.
Free soul. That's all I gotta say.
I think I watched that documentary. Right? Free Sobel?
God damn it.
Thank you. Oh, don't worry. We've got plenty more. We've got plenty more episodes to come, people.
What are you looking forward to in the next episode? Is there anything that do you have any idea what's coming up? For one, I feel like I don't really know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, this one kind of ended without like a lead-in. The last episode kind of did too, but at least they were saying like, hey, we're moving on to France. And this episode picked up after, I'm assuming they had been in France for a while, because then they were moving out, they'd already had new recruits, but this one they didn't even mention like where they're going from here, so I really don't know if they're still going to be in Holland, if they're going to be moving through to somewhere. I don't know. This is kind of a spot we haven't really been in with the show, of not really knowing what the next move is going to be. It'll also be curious to see how many new people we're introduced to now that we've again suffered a loss of a lot of different troops. I wonder who's going to kind of be coming in, and if anyone that comes in is going to be around for a while and a mainstay, or if they're going to be a lot more one and done, or another one and done type. That's also always the fun thing about these, is like when I get to watch, because normally I always assume, I guess I should have assumed that McAvoy would be the one to be one and done in this, because it seems like all the one and dones are typically the more successful actors. like Hall was played by the guy who then went on to play Moriarty in Sherlock, and then I think he was the star of Fleabag, and he's been in a lot of other stuff. But James McAvoy, I'm just curious to see who's going to come in next.
I wonder if at a certain point we're going to kind of like circle back around to like one of the other guys as the main character again. Like, I'm sure Winters will probably get another episode because he's like the lead, I feel like.
I think Winters will, continue being just the kind of main... Even when other people have focus, he'll still be kind of the main character.
Yeah, and we're still waiting on our Nixon episode, which I'm sure is later. Malarkey hasn't really had an episode yet, right? Because he wasn't really the episode 2. He wasn't really like the main guy, right? I feel like it was more Garnier and Winters.
I think they kind of positioned him with the like stopping and talking from the guy from with the guy from Oregon and all of that type of stuff. But I think he's one that they've just kind of given bits to in every episode, but there hasn't been like a here's the malarkey episode.
Like I said in episode 2, I was kind of like, oh, I'm interested to see if we're going to get, like, if it's going to stay high action. And this episode we did get the action we got, like, towards the second half of it was a lot more intense. I could kind of see going forward it being a little bit more like that from time to time, depending on, like, I know, like, what, the Battle of the Bulge still has to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that'll be a crazy episode. But, like, I'm sure there'll be at least one or two more episodes that are kind of like this, where it's a little bit of, like, filler exposition-y before we get to, like, more conflict and combat, which is fine to me, because I'm kind of, we had the Day of Days episode that was kind of like, oh man, I'm hooked. This is so actiony, like, but there wasn't a ton besides. I feel like Winters and Garnier, there wasn't like a ton of like exposition on the group. I'm kind of interested to get a little bit more of that as we go along. I think something I said probably episode 1, I was probably like, I want to see them become like the band of brothers, like get that more like unison. And I feel like we got a taste of that in this episode with how much everyone respects Bull and was like sending out like a whole search party to go like to retrieve him. Like the new recruits respected him that much. Like we got a taste of that like unity, and I'm excited to see some more of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you make a good point. I'm excited to see when I said you've got kind of some of the relationships forming, but yeah, seeing more of those, how they develop, and just kind of some of the crux. Because right now it just seems like there's groups, but they're not all fully kind of like connected. Seeing more of that.
Yeah, like I feel like Toy and Garnier are like kind of like one of the little groups. It was interesting to me that is it Cop?
Yeah,
or Cobb? That he was kind of like tagging along with the new recruits towards the second half of the episode, and I was like, after he was the one, I'm pretty sure that was like, you didn't even drop. Like, why are you wearing that badge? And then he's like, oh, I'm not going to go back into that town. I'm not going to go back into that town. And then he's with the new recruits going back into the town. And I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, that wasn't interesting. But I mean, again, we kind of had that conversation of the things that bring you closer together being in that situation. And I think it probably helped too when Bull gave him that kind of talking to about it. But yeah, no, like I said, I'm excited for a couple different things. And again, I get it. Every episode I feel like is one of the ones that you finish and you're like, okay, wait, nope, hold on, I can't start yet. I gotta wait till at least after we record. We can do the next one. Hopefully the people listening are doing the same thing and they didn't just go through and binge it all and then they're sitting there. Hopefully they're also waiting to go episode by episode. They're not just waiting till we reach the last episode and then they're gonna binge the podcast.
And I mean, they'll be waiting a week if we release it week by week. That's 2.5 months almost. So they're gonna be sad boys and girls if they're taking their time waiting on us.
Hopefully, just following along, just week by week, people, week by week. We'll see you at the next one.
We'll see you at episode 5, Crossroads. You can watch along on Max as we keep going through Band of Brothers. Let us know at Cocktails and Classics Pod on Instagram or cocktailsandclassicspod.com. Let us know your thoughts on Band of Brothers episode 4, Replacements. Share your thoughts on what we have to say about the episode. Are we idiots? Are we geniuses? Did we crack the Da Vinci Code with Garnier saluting out in the front lines? Share us with your friends and family. Check us out next week with episode 5, and as always, watch responsibly.